Thanks everybody for being here. Thought a really good game. Great to be back home in front of our people. Obviously, I think one of the greatest fan bases in the world, and just to see them out there and the energy they bring, and just it's a tough place to play, and they do a really good job of being. Just being part of the team and knowing that they influence it. It's very important. But 20 or whatever it was, almost felt like a month off before we were back. So great to be there, and then great to have a decisive win. I think at one point in the fourth quarter, we were looking at whatever it was, 600 and some yards to I think 70 is what you guys told me when we came back in, and there was moments where it felt like that. We just played really, really hard, and everybody did their part. Complementary football, a lot of individuals, stood out in there. A lot of different people. Obviously, Wayne continues to do his thing, so phenomenal job. But Joby, to step in when he really needed to, being able to make plays, and then you get over to the defensive side, and I just thought, DJ's interception was a perfect moment. But Culp's been playing some really good, defense. He's just got to come down with a couple of these picks, and but he's been really doing a great job out there as well. But the defensive line to get after it, and then Morgan Suarez, we don't talk enough about him, but 3 field goals and a bunch of extra points. I thought really good offensively. Overall, you go over 300 on both of those, offense or on running the ball and through the air. Obviously, it's going to amount to something pretty positive, but then defensively to hold them the 1 rushing yard is pretty special. So a lot of good things in there. I told you guys earlier in the week I was concerned about the special teams and the amount of things they did. You knew a fake punt was coming, and then when it did show up, I thought DJ and the rest of the guys did an excellent job of staying true to their responsibilities, and I think that ultimately kind of put the nail in it, when it was all said and done.
You mentioned the only giving up 1 rushing yard after a game like Marshall where they were able to run the football. How important was a game like that against App State to kind of make that statement?
Yeah, very important. I think that, Marshall, they ran it a different way. These guys didn't really commit to running the football at all. They carried, I think, handed off 15 times only in the whole game. But that also came down to the time of possession, too. And when you go through the air, and whether that's your decision or you're just not having success on the ground, so that's what you decide to do. But when you end up in that spot where you're throwing it more than you're not, now all of a sudden it's 43-17 time of possession or something along those lines. And that's a challenge for, I think, any team, so when they did decide to run it, eventually became that they weren't running it anymore. So it got a little bit easier, but we needed to be able to bounce back from that for sure.
How much of a point of emphasis was it to force them into the air attack when they're coming into this game with who was the leading rusher in the conference at that point?
Yeah, and again, did you think you could hold them like we did? No, you definitely did not. That number 7 is a very, very good running back, and they were great at stopping the run. They were great at running the ball, and then they used the play-action game off of that to take some shots to loosen you back up to go back to running the ball. But when you can make it one-dimensional like that, you certainly have an advantage.
I know you didn't have a chance to really evaluate Landon after the game on Saturday. I'm just curious if you have an update on him now.
Yeah, he was out there yesterday. He was in a boot on Sunday. He'll be in a boot again today, but he feels like he'll be good to go on Tuesday. It's just a little ankle, like a low ankle thing, nothing crazy. But we'll just keep him off of it for a couple of days so he could get back out here and go.
Are there any conversations about the fact that this is an out-of-conference game coming up at this point in the year, or is it just being treated like a normal?
Yeah, I think just a normal game. I mean, there's still a lot rides on every single game from here on in. So this is as formidable opponent as we've faced up to this point in time, and they are really, really good. So our guys understand what it takes. They are in the habit of just doing what they do every single day, like just going out there and preparing and practicing and knowing that Saturday shows up, and the way we can play on Saturday has a lot to do with what happens on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So, the confidence we want to have going into this game on Saturday is going to start, from what we do all week long. So I don't think anybody, they're committed to playing a style of football that they believe in, and that is a relentless brand of football that they are not going to waver from. So whoever you roll out there and whoever we get on the road and go play, they are going to play one way and one way only.
How different is it preparing for a team that, is opposite side of the country, probably couldn't be further away, and, you don't share a lot of common opponents.
Yeah.
You're not really recruiting the same areas either.
Yeah.
How different is that preparation when it's kind of so different?
Well, when there's no common opponent, when you look at it and just say, we don't necessarily know, we know we played those guys and what that felt like, so we could kind of imagine, who these guys are, or kind of deduce your own, idea of who they are, especially from a physical brand and speed, standpoint. But you can't do that when you don't haven't played any of them or even seen anybody really that they play. So that's the little bit of the difference. UVA offers you a little something, but nothing significant enough. And I think for me, there's more that I notice in there, and probably, some of the coaches that came from Holy Cross that notice a South Dakota flavor to it all, South Dakota State flavor to it all, which, they were back to back to back, I think, national champions and just played this physical, tough brand of football. And that's what you see from them. And a lot of these names are South Dakota State guys that came with them. So these are names that we've seen before and understand who they are, but as players, it is a challenge.
Just to go off of that, how might Matt Sluka help Alonzo Barnett if you see a lot of those South Dakota State players?
I think a lot for him to have actual knowledge of those, some of those players, but ultimately the scheme. The blitz game looks very similar to what it did when we were at South Dakota, when we played them at South Dakota. Offensively, a lot of tight end, sets, 12 Ps that shift and motion and get you into inside zones and then work a boot game off of it, move the pocket, the backs out of the backfield quite a bit in the pass game, and then they get into a little bit of the outside zone game and set it up with some quarterback run as well. But that is the thing that I think when you watch it, you watch this running back run. He's a tough kid, and he puts his pads down and he seeks out contact. The one play, the interception against UVA, that's one that stands out to me. He's a running back, but here an interception happens, and he's the guy running downfield, knifing through a wide receiver and making a tackle on that defensive back, which could have ended up being a pretty big play. It just shows the toughness. He's not afraid to put his face in there, and that's what their whole team's about.
On the defense side of the field, they've been pretty hot lately. What do you see out of that defense?
They're just aggressive. The defense, it starts up front. The defensive line's really good. The corners are, as quick, physical, sticky in coverage as you can imagine. The safeties are playing downhill, and the linebackers can run sideline to sideline. They are a complete team. And I know their record doesn't say it, and you're going to look at it and have your own questions, but I think that the Ole Miss game, the UVA game, those are two that stand out to me that certainly say the type of ball that they're capable of on the defensive side. And I said it earlier, when you can run in these short yardage situations and you're one of the best in the country in short yardage situations, that speaks about your toughness. And then when your defense is really, really good as well, that speaks about your toughness. This is absolutely a very tough team that's coming in here. And this will be, two tough teams that get a chance to square up against each other on Saturday, and we're excited for it.
You kind of led into my next point with their offense. Their season high is 162. They got close to that this past weekend. What do you see from them on the offensive side of the ball?
Well, I think that, again, the run game is where it ultimately starts. There's a lot of misdirection with the motions and the shifts that happen pre-snap, and then they get themselves into some play action stuff. But there's a moment where this quarterback is really good. We played him actually when he was at Bryant College back in the day, and he had a pretty good day, actually a really good day against us in a game that was pretty much decided, and he came back out and said he doesn't want it to be decided anymore, and in the third and fourth quarter he started to just go off, and he was really good that day, and he is good. But they'll involve him as well in some of the run game, and just the follow plays that they have and get him downhill too. So that's when they have their most success, is when the ball's being run inside. Then they're spitting it out on some play action or a little boot game with running backs fast to the flat, and then they'll add in the quarterback on the run game. They'll max protect it and take their shots downfield, and this kid has a very capable arm, and offensive line is very aggressive and does a good job protecting them. There's not a lot of negative plays when you pull up the film on these guys. Not a lot of people get to them.
You mentioned their quarterback. Is he pretty similar to when you did last see him on the tape, or is he grown? Or
he's a little. It's 4 years ago, or 4 years ago maybe. So he's different. Yeah, he's definitely different.
I know you were asked about the fact of this being a non-conference game, and I know strength of schedule has kind of been a hot-button topic in terms of not being in the CFP rankings for some of the outsiders. I know you've said you're not necessarily concerned about that right now, but do you view this game as an opportunity to kind of just prove, I don't know, hey,
yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. I mean, it's a formidable opponent that's walking in here, that plays at a very high level. So I think that any time you have a chance, to do that and play against anybody, you want it to be your best. And I don't know that that's like our motivator in any way, but that's certainly, a side effect of this game against a team that we don't share a lot in common with coming across the country.
It's been a few times this season in which your quarterback's had an early pick and it hasn't really seemed to affect him as the game has gone on. What do you guys like about Alonso's personality, just in terms of his way to kind of bounce back and stuff like that? I mean, he seems, just from observing him, he's pretty stoic, but he's not afraid to dance in the end zone or show some frustration sometimes. But kind of talk about his personality.
Yeah, I think you're right. He's not afraid to dance in the end zone. He's a lot of them, and he's not afraid to he gets upset and he lets everybody know at times, and that's really good. But majority of the time, especially in play, he's keeping it very even keeled. He's not letting himself ride the highs or sink with the lows. He does a really good job of just getting himself to the next play, processing information. I imagine for him, it's the amount of information that he's capable of processing, as far as what the defense is doing, how the offense works, all the things that come with the alerts and the check system and everything else that we're asking him to do. I think that for him, you need a calm mind to be able to execute those things, and he certainly understands that. So even though there might be spikes, he allows himself and brings himself right back. Even if he finds himself drifting a little bit, he pulls himself right back in as quick as he can to be able to say, I got to execute this next play, and they're asking a lot of me as the quarterback here, so I have a job to do, and he gets right back to that job.
I'm a little curious. Obviously, you guys have the benefit of not having to go on the road for this one, and Washington State has to make the cross-country trip. How difficult can that be to adjust when you're making, a time zone jump and then just being in a plane for as long as you are? Yeah,
so we went that way when we played South Dakota. And honestly, you could go back to our time at Division II or FC, we'd sometimes be in a bus for 8 hours taking a trip. I think that, as long as you manage it right and you get to bed at the right time, and you're going to change your patterns a little bit as far as dinners and breakfast and those things. But most teams now also practice in the morning. So even though this is an earlier game, they're probably practicing at, 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning anyway. So I don't know that it's as big as advantage as it might seem on paper, given probably the functionality of their organization and just the way they'll understand the sports science and the nutrition and the rest and all the things that come with it. I think, getting in a plane and taking a flight, for, a couple hours is a lot better than getting on that bus and, driving 8 or 9 hours, even our 4.5 hours on a tight bus, the other day. That's probably more of a disadvantage than, a quick flight.
You mentioned earlier about Elijah Culp, and just how about your corners and how well they've played this year? Because Justin's had a phenomenal year also. Obviously, the pass rush helps those guys.
Yes.
But there weren't a lot of guys open the other day either against App State. They took a lot of shots. How about the progression, especially of those two?
Well, I think and their confidence also, right? You start the game with a sluggo, immediately that's what they do is decide to go try out 30, right? And he does an unbelievable job and gets the ball on the ground. And then after that, there's just not a lot to talk about with their receiver, productivity with those guys out there. And they just keep getting better. They keep finding ways to get better. And we talked about as a team, there's moments where you'll question it and you'll wonder, just man, am I gonna have a good game or not, especially mid-game if you got beat a couple times, but they find a way to bring themselves really back very quickly to get away from that spiral way of thinking. And I think their teammates help them a lot with that speed to the next. I think everybody's got each other's backs on this team, and that's really what stands out to me. It's not any just, hey, those two corners are good. Yeah, they're playing really well, but they have moments, and then their team and teammates do a really good job of making sure they bring them back in and get them, where they need to be in the right headspace. And they are actively working on that as well as individuals. So I think we just got a pretty neat group of guys. I told you this from many weeks ago. The fibers of a great team, a championship level team, and who knows, maybe more, certainly lie within this program. And we just got to make sure that we're putting them in the environment to test it over and over again, so that they could continue to have that confidence to put themselves on the field and know that they could stand toe to toe with anybody.
You were asked this earlier, but what's it mean to clinch the Sun Belt East? And now you'll have another game potentially at Bridgeforth Stadium. We'll see how that works out. But is it nice to clinch that right now and kind of get that out of the way? Yeah,
we talk a lot about it, that the reward for good work is more work, right? And that's the way life usually works. And these guys are, I know, excited to know that they at least have one more game. And who knows how it all plays out? Nobody knows. But ultimately, the idea of this being their last home game for Trent and some of these guys that have been here, JT, name them, that have been here the entire time, this possibly being their senior year last home game is this one Saturday. The fact that it's possible that they'll have another one and it be home, that's not decided yet, correct? Yeah, so the fact that is possible means that, the way they finish this matters a lot.
Well, Well, speak about your senior class, with it being senior day this weekend.
Yep.
Obviously, with you coming in, you inherit some guys, but guys like Trent and JT that have been through there, they stuck with you through this process.
Yep.
You bring in guys that are here for 1 or 2 years that mean a lot to you as well. But I'm guessing the senior class means a heck of a lot to you, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, just go back to 2 years ago, right? There's those guys that, that stayed and should be celebrated probably more than anybody, that we talk about celebrating on this team. Guys that were here for, their entire time. It's impressive, and I think that is something that's not lost on us. But everybody, that's here that is, shared the field for this year or 2 years, whatever it might be, there's a lot of gratitude towards those guys. And when you think about what was here when we got here and just how much and how many new faces came through this program, and those guys would be great ones to talk about. I think what I would hope would say is that we found, that even though they're different people that came through here, they're all focused on the same thing, and that we're doing a really good job in not just bringing in really good football players, but also good people. And I think that is the tie that will bind them all together, hopefully for life, is the fact that they all came here to accomplish, a goal, and are on track to do that, but also that they had a chance to share a lot of experiences together in the locker room and off the field and, truly care about each other because they're just genuinely good people.